I want to begin this morning sharing a quote with you. This is from a Russian writer named Alexander Solzhenitsyn. I came across this years ago, and at the time, I had never heard of Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Didn't ring any bells with me, but when I saw what he wrote, when I read it to myself, I realized that though I didn't know this man, I knew exactly what he was talking about. I've been there, done that. Maybe you have too. Follow along with this. I've done many things that conflicted with the great aims I had set for myself, but something has always brought me back to the true path. I want you to think back to a time in your life when you really did feel like you were on the right track. You were traveling with the right people. You were doing things in a way that just made you feel good inside. You just sensed, this is why I'm here. I'm doing what I was born to do. I'm moving in a direction that's going to take me good places. A direction that's going to take me wherever it is I need to be. Wherever God wants me to be. I don't know about you, but I knew as a fairly young kid basically what I was supposed to do in my life. I was going to follow God. I didn't fully understand what that was going to mean, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. I felt very confident about it. But guess what? I have done many things that conflicted with the great aims I had set myself. But something has always brought me back to the true path. Maybe you could put it this way and be a little more accurate about it. We do things that conflict, maybe even sabotage our journey toward the great aims we've set for ourselves, the ones from God, the ones from good people who gave us wise advice. But we do things that conflict with that, and we get off the true path. Well, thank God there's something, maybe it's somebody, I think it may be somebody, who always seems to draw us back, even when we wander, even when we get lost. That's basically the gospel. That all we like sheep go astray, but there's a good shepherd who comes looking for his sheep. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I have to be taught things twice. Is once enough for you? Do you always get it the first time? Do you always stick with it the first time? Well, if you don't get to feeling too special about that. You're not the first. Goodness gracious. Let me tell you about a man who did that a long time ago. His name was Jonah. Now, Jonah knew what he was supposed to do. He had an aim. It was a God-given aim, a destination. He was going to a place called Nineveh. He knew it. He knew that's what he was supposed to do. But somehow he didn't make it. Because when he got to the port, and there were ships coming and going, all sorts of places, he noticed that some ships were going places other than where he was supposed to go. And some of those places, some of those destinations were exotic. Some of those destinations were exciting. Some of those destinations were much better vacation spots than Nineveh. I mean, Nineveh is not where you want to spend your spring break. Not if you're a prophet or even a teenager. Nineveh was in a foreign country. It was an enemy country. There was a bunch of bad dudes in Nineveh. When the Ninevites, who were Assyrians, when they took a place, when they conquered a city, they would perform the most horrific tortures on people you can imagine. I'm not even going to talk about it. It was so awful. It was an awful, rough group of people who had caused Jonah and his people a lot of trouble. It was a dangerous place to go. It was an ugly old town, too. It was a town that had been built and destroyed and rebuilt and destroyed over and over and over. Nothing good ever happened in Nineveh for very long, it seemed. Jonah didn't want to go there. What do you do when you don't want to go somewhere? When there's something that you sense is, this is the direction I know I need to take. The people that set me on this course love me. The people who set me on this course understand me. They know what's best for me. But something conflicts with that. Something sends us all sorts of other places. And that happened to Jonah. Jonah did not go to Nineveh. In fact, he went into a big mess. There's one good thing about getting off your true path. You know what the good thing is about getting off your true path in life? Here it is. You get off your true path in life for long enough, and you're going to start hating it. You get off your true path, and eventually bad things are going to start happening. You're going to wind up in places you never expected to be, you never wanted to be, and I'm saying that's a good thing. It actually is. Because if I got on the wrong path, and the consequences of that saved up and waited all the way until it was too late to turn around, then wherever I'm going, I might wind up and have to stay there. But here's what God does. Once we've taken a wrong path in life, at first, it starts off good. It starts off exciting. It feels free. I remember one day I was in Frisco City, Alabama. I think I was 18 years old. And there was a slow-moving freight train coming through town. And I had been wanting to be a hobo ever since I was younger, because my granddaddy Sawyer, was a hobo during the Great Depression back in the 30s, and he was always telling me these exciting stories about hobo. And one time he went all the way to Mississippi, got over there, and it was really cool. He had to go around from door to door begging for food. He'd go to the back door, and there was this sweet little old woman who gave him a chicken leg one time. And that's just something about that. What adventure. What adventure. One time he was going around the bend with his legs dangling out of a boxcar. And because he was going around the bend, the engineer looked back, saw those legs dangling, put him off, way out by himself. The poor thing had to walk. But I'd never done anything like that. I'd never been to Mississippi all by myself. I got on this freight train. And I got in that boxcar, and I was dangling my legs out the door. And we crossed over a busy highway. It was about like 71. And the arms came down, the lights were flashing. There was a stack of cars from here to the other end of that church, 2 lanes of them. And I went by just waving, laughing, just having the best time. And I think that's when the engineer saw me. But he was a much nicer engineer than my granddaddy Sawyer had, because we came to this one place. It was called Horseshoe Bend. It was this place where the railroad track makes a big, wide horseshoe. Like, here's the road right here. Here's the road. And that track, it comes from this way. It crosses, goes back, and comes across again. So it crosses the road in like twice in like a half-mile stretch. Well, when we went across that first crossing, that train slowed down. It slowed down, and I mean, it was creeping. I could have just stepped off and strutted on back to where my friend was waiting, because my friend had come to meet me there. And he was hollering, "Get off, Lance, get off. This is your chance. Get off. They're doing you a favor. Get off now." But I was having such a big time. Why would I want to get off now? And so I said, "Tell you what, just go around to the next crossing, pick me up there. You'll find me around at the next crossing." Well, that was my chance. Because I was doing something that conflicted with the great aims. And something was about to set me back on the true course. Because as we went across there, going slow, that train driver, he started picking up a little bit of speed. Boogity. And next thing you know, we were flying. I mean, I just realized I got a train engineer sitting right here. Francis Hardy's son. He's had to deal with people like me. Doesn't that just aggravate? What do you do with him? You just take him for a ride. Well, that's what one of your coworkers did for me. He took me for the ride of my life. Zoom, just going fast. And I realized this next crossing where my friend was waiting, this is the last crossing between here and Mississippi, as far as I knew. And we were going so fast. And my granddad had always told me, when you come off a fast-moving train, Lance, here's what you got to do. You just got to hit the ground running. You know, you hit the ground running, and you just keep right on running. But see, he rode those old coal burners. And I got to hunch they didn't quite go as fast as a diesel. And I started practicing coming off, hitting the ground running, but I could tell what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen, right? My legs were going to fold up under me, and I was going to go tumbling. And so, I'm fixing to tell you why I've had so many back troubles. A lot of it was falls off horses, but this is the worst fall. I mean, this is awful. I had this idea. I've seen Western movies. You've seen this now, and you'll understand why this makes perfect sense. By the way, when you're doing something dumb, when you've taken the wrong path, when you've done something conflicting with the great aims, dumb things can seem really smart. Destructive things can seem like the right thing. And so I've seen these movies, Western movies, where a man climbs down off of a stagecoach while it's moving, and he comes down the back, and he's laying underneath holding on to the axle with his boots dragging. And what he does is he turns loose, and he just stops right there. And stagecoach keeps going. If it works on a stagecoach, it'll work on a train. So I grabbed a hold of I climbed out, and somehow I got a hold of this ladder down near the ground. And I was grabbing hold of that ladder, and I would sort of test it. We were going so fast, I'd lower my little bohonkus down over the rocks and ease down and just feel it nicking me. I thought, okay, I'm not going to do it that way. But then it hit me. I will hold on to this thing and let it drag me. And what I was holding on. And then what I'm going to do is my legs are bouncing along those rocks. And what I'm going to do is just go, and I'll just stop right there. And it'll keep going. Well, I stopped right there. Train kept going. So did I. I'm talking about, I wish I had it on film. It was like tumbling or something. It was, I must have rolled, 30, 40, 50 yards. I mean, rolling in all sorts of different concorded positions. And finally stopped. And it just didn't go for me like it had gone for my grandfather or for people on television. Horrific fall. But I'm telling you, there's a whole lot of things when you're on the wrong track. There's a whole lot of things that seem to be a good idea at the time that aren't. And that's how, to use another analogy, we dig a hole, and then to deal with the hole, we dig some more. And you know the first rule of holes, right? When you're in one, stop digging. Jonah got himself in a hole. Let me tell you about the hole he got himself into. He took a trip that diverted him from the great aims God had set for him. Let me read you first from a verse I read last week, chapter 1, verse 1, 2, and 3. Chapter 1, verse 1, 2, and 3. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah, the son of Amittai, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and cry out against it, for their wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah arose to flee to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. He went down to Joppa and found a ship going to Tarshish, so he paid the fare, went down into it to go to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. But he didn't go long before his ship hit a big storm. Now, when he was sailing out of the harbor, I think he was probably enjoying the ride. It was a sunny day, a gentle breeze blowing in just the right direction. The crew was friendly. And so Jonah paid the fare. But when he got out on the sea, verse 15 to 17 says, a great storm arose. A storm so bad that the ship was about to be broken in two. They picked up Jonah, threw him into the sea, and the sea ceased from its raging. Now the Lord had prepared a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Now what did he do? Before we tell you how he got out of there, let's talk about what he did while he was in the belly of the fish. Because in one way or another, all of us have spent at least a little time in the belly of a fish down at the very bottom of the depths. We find ourselves in the belly of a fish, in nasty places, yucky places, dark places where we're trapped, don't know what else to do but pray. Now, I don't know where you do your praying. If you have a certain spot that you'd like to go, say your prayers. Jonah did his praying in the belly of a fish. And he said, God, forgive me. I've done something that conflicted badly with the great aim you set for me. Can you please put me back on the right course? Well, did that make things better? That's kind of a tricky question because, yes, it did, but it got worse before it got better. It's bad. It's bad to be hanging out in a fish's belly. Very stinking place to be, for one thing. It might even bleach your skin out. All the acids. But Jonah made the fish so sick that it vomited him out on the land. Sometimes when we're in a bad enough place, it takes something even worse to help us get where we need to be. And that's the way it was with Jonah. But that's when Jonah, laying on the beach, feeling like a can of sardines that's been open for 3 weeks. Here's what the Bible says. Then the Lord spoke to Jonah a second time. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time. Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, and preach it the message that I tell you. What I want you to see is the message that Jonah got the second time was basically the same message he got the first time. Because he really did hear it right the first time. Maybe you did too. Who was it that taught you right from wrong? Mother, grandparents, teacher, some youth worker. People taught us the gist of what the true path is. And when we get off the true path, which is very easy to do, and something begins to draw us back to it, and we hear the word for a second time, it's often the same thing we heard the first time. Come back to where you left the trail. Do you know the Bible is full of stories about people who had to hear it a second time? If you didn't get it right the first time, at that period in your life where you were fairly innocent, you didn't even know what it was to make a big mistake. And yet one time is not enough for everybody. Some of us, most of us have to hear it at least a second time. The Bible's full of those stories. You know, there are all sorts of reasons why people don't follow the right path the first time. I'll give you some examples. Abraham, in Genesis chapter 12, the way the Bible reads is, it says, now the Lord had said to Abram, go to a land I'll show you. Leave your father's home. Go to this faraway land that I want to show you. I'll bless you and you'll be a blessing to others. Did you pay attention to that word that I quoted? Now the Lord had said to Abraham. Well, there's a backstory there. The Lord first said to Abraham, go, leave your father's household, which was in Ur of the Chaldees, go to Canaan. But at the time, really the word of the Lord had to come to Abram a second time too, because Abram at the time, he finally made up his mind to go all the way. He wasn't living in Ur, the place he'd come from, but neither was he living in Canaan, the place he was headed. He was living in a place called Haran, which is sort of halfway in between. Now, you don't have to be super smart to catch a parallel there. Some of the most important journeys in life, in fact, maybe most of the most important journeys in life, are not journeys you can make in a single bound. No matter how good of a jumper you are, you can take one step in the right direction, which is the right thing to do. But if for any reason I take that one step, but don't take the second, the third, the fourth, I'm not going to get to where life is leading me, where God is taking me. Abraham, you might say he got off to a good start. He did head out toward this new land. He just didn't go all the way. He just sort of went halfway, one step. And he was living in limbo. He was living in what some people call liminal space. Liminal space, limbo, that's when you're not where you used to be, and that's good, but you're also not yet where you're going to be, and that's bad. It's like you're living in the hallway of life. You know what it's like when you leave one room because you needed to get out of that relationship. Needed for that phase of my life to end. So you walk out and the door shuts behind you. And thank God sometimes the door locks behind you so you can't go back. But now you're out in the hallway and you see all these doors. Like Jonah. He sees all the ships coming and going to all sorts of destinations. And what you do during this hallway experience, in this liminal space, when one thing's ended and the next one has not started, when you've said goodbye to one phase of life, one way of life, but you're not yet at the next one, keep going till you get there. Because one of the most miserable places to live is in the hallways of life. Abraham was living in the hallway. And he was never going to get where he was going until he went all the way. You see how easy it is to miss the true path? Sometimes we divert off the true path. Other times, Abraham didn't actually leave the true path. He just stopped walking. It's possible to be on the true path, to be heading in the right direction, but you just don't go far enough. You just stop. Abraham did that. And so the word of the Lord had to come to Abraham the second time. Okay. Go to Canaan. Because as long as you stay here, yeah, you left the place I told you to, but you're not where you need to be. Keep going. Another thing that can cause people to get off the true path is just discouragement or fear. And it can happen to the most godly, faith-filled people imaginable. Elijah the Tishbite, the most powerful of all the Hebrew prophets, in my opinion. Elijah did tremendous work. He had spiritual power like very few other people in the Bible ever experienced. But one day, Elijah got word that Jezebel was going to kill him. And she was going to kill him by this time tomorrow. And for some reason, as bold as Elijah had already been, he had just had a showdown with 450 prophets of Baal. He had no fear that he showed during that. But then he heard that one woman was going to kill him. And you know what he did? He took off running. And he ran and he ran and he ran as far as he could into the desert for his life. And when he finally gave out, he crouched down under a juniper bush. And you know what he said? He said, Lord, take my life. I'm done. He was afraid. He was discouraged. You know what else? He was just tired. He was spent. And he thought that his life was over. He was ready to end it. What he didn't know is there was a lot left for him to do yet. And that's when God led him to a cave. And he heard an earthquake. But God was not in the earthquake. Then there came a raging fire. But God was not in the fire. And there was a horrible wind that was blowing rocks off the sides of the mountain. But God was not in the wind. And then he heard a still small voice. And when Elijah heard it, he put his cloak on, which symbolized his cloak was his symbol as a prophet his mantle, they called it. He took back up the thing he'd thrown off, and he went and stood in the mouth of the cave to listen and see what was next. The word of the Lord had to come to him a second and a third time. You know, the word of the Lord had to come to David a second time. Now, when David was a young man, the word of the Lord seemed to come to him all the time. What I mean by that is he had all sorts of amazing spiritual experiences. He experienced lots of victories. And it was very obvious to him and to the people around him that God was at work in David's life. God delivered him from a bear. God delivered him from a lion. God delivered a Philistine giant into his hand. He was a hero, not because of what he'd done, but because of what God was doing through him. He was so close to God that he was referred to as a man after God's own heart. He knew what God's voice sounded like, but even a man after God's own heart can get off the road. He can do things that conflict with the great aims he'd set for himself. And in his case, it started with a beautiful woman. Do you know about the 3 D's of the devil? You ever told you about the 3 D's of the devil? Actually, there's 4 D's of the devil. That'll get a person. One of them got David. The 4 D's of the devil: doubt, discouragement, debt, and the women. And it was that 4th D that got David. And he left the true path, really. Left the true path because of one of the women. And next thing you know, he committed murder. He was hiding it. He was so far off the true path. And then one day, the word of the Lord came into him a second time. And guess what? At this point, David didn't want to hear anything from the Lord. Hey, listen, but he had been doing a good job of covering this thing up. And God's not into cover-ups, by the way. He just won't help us out with those things very much. It can get so aggravating. God was not helping David cover up. So when Nathan the prophet came to see David, David got uneasy. And even Nathan the prophet knew, hey, I got to be careful how I say this to David. Because if I just blurt it out, you have been messing around with the women and with their husbands and killing people. No, David wouldn't have listened to that. He was not open to that. By the way, if in this moment you don't want to hear this, pay extra close attention because you desperately need to hear it. The very fact that you don't want to hear it shows that you're pretty far off that path. But guess what? Something's going to bring you back to the true path. You know why? Philippians 1:6 says this. Philippians 1:6. Be sure that he who began a good work in you will continue his work until it's finally finished on the day when Jesus Christ returns. God finishes what he started. He puts you on the true path. You can do many things that conflict with that. Something always going to bring you back to the true path. David didn't want to hear it, but finally heard it. David, you are the man. Here's where you left the path. Make this right. This is a bad way to live, David, but it's an even worse way to die. You hear that? When you're off the true path and you know it and you don't want to hear about it, that is a very bad way to live, but it's a far worse way to die. So while you're living, open your ears, because there's hope for you. Maybe you left the path because you did do your best. You tried. You really tried. You gave it everything you had, but you failed. That's what happened to Peter. Peter loved his master Jesus with everything he had. He had forsaken everything. He left everything to follow Jesus. And when he heard that Jesus may get arrested, Peter made a bold statement, and he meant it. He said, even if everybody else forsakes you, I never will. Don't you? Now, do you think he meant that? I think he meant that. Most of the big promises and commitments I've made in my life, at the time I made them, I meant them. I did. So did Peter. But that was before something pulled him off the true path. In this case, it was plain fear when he saw what happened to Jesus. And then you know what happened. Next, he denied Jesus 3 times. I don't know him. First time. Second time he was asked, aren't you with Jesus? I don't know him. The third time, it was blah, 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 beep, beep, beep. I told you I don't know him, bleep, bleep, bleep. And that stopped him. No more questions. And then he heard a rooster crow. And you remember Jesus said, before the rooster crows, you'll deny me 3 times. He went out and wept bitterly. Oh, off the path. But guess what? The word of the Lord came to Peter a second time after the resurrection. And the Lord said to Mary Magdalene, go tell my disciples and Peter to meet me on the mountain in Galilee. Tell the disciples, meet me there like we talked about, but mention Peter by name. This was Peter's second calling. You see, when we talk about getting off the true path, we're not just talking about becoming a drug addict and going to prison. I mean, yeah, that counts. That'll work. That'll do it. Oh, but there's a whole lot of other things. And if you think that's the only sort of thing that'll do it, think again. Because you may be off the path and don't even realize it because you got a pretty clean record. Oh, Peter had a clean record. Peter was not an adulterer. He had never deliberately defied Jesus. He just found that in the clinch, when the pressure was on, he couldn't take it. The word of the Lord came the second time. One last Bible story, and this is the best one. Samson. The word of the Lord came to Samson before he was even born. He will be a Nazarite. Nazarite vows means a whole lots of rules he's got to keep, but the symbol of that is his hair. Let no razor come on his head. He never told anybody. Until he got mixed up with the 4th D. Delilah. And Delilah pulled that secret out of him. He fell asleep on her lap. Woke up with a haircut. And his strength was gone. The Philistines, they bound him. They took hot pokers and gouged out his eyes. They put him down in a dungeon at a corn grinding mill, and he did the work of a donkey, round and around and around. Day after, he didn't have to see to be able to do that because he was hitched to it. He just crawled. And he went round and round and round in circles, which is sometimes the way it feels when you've left the true path. After a point, you start going in circles. But guess what? It may be better to go around in circles than to just keep going in the complete wrong direction. At least you're not getting any further away. He was going round and round in circles. And one day he felt something on the back of his neck. Mosquitoes, horsefly, knocked it off. Kept grinding, going round and round. And there it was again. Knocked it off again. And he ground some more. And he felt it again, only this time he didn't slap it. He eased back and felt it. And you know what he felt? My hair. My hair. It's growing again. And the Bible says, in spite of all the wrong turns Samson took, in spite of all the ways he wasted the potential, he started with his hair started growing again. And that meant the world. Because if my hair can grow again, then maybe my connection with God could grow again too. And maybe if my relationship with God begins to grow again, something can call me back to the true path after all. And it did. I don't know if you've noticed lately or not, but your hair is still growing. Because wherever it is you've ventured, whether you're going in circles or in the complete wrong direction, or whether you're on the right path, but you've just stopped all forward progress. Wherever you are, you're not alone. God is following. Jesus has not left the building, is what I'm telling you. He's not left the building. He's not left your life. Wherever you are, He is. And so may the word of the Lord, as it comes to you this second time, or maybe this 42nd time, reach back, feel that hair is growing, and know that there's hope. Come to the true path where you belong.